Hey everyone, this is the Critical Reel in what is my first audio review slash podcast. My name is Zach, and forgive me if I'm boring because I've never done this before. If you've been following me the past few years, you know that I've been as involved in the film criticism scene as possible. I've been writing movie reviews for a number of years, I think 2.5, 3 years maybe. And I've been publishing them on my website, thecriticalreel.com, which I will try my best to link to you. I think if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can find the link in the description box below. If you are listening to my podcast on iTunes, and I hope this podcast will eventually make it to iTunes, I think that is the goal here, then just visit thecriticalreel.com, that's one word. For all my written reviews for the past few years, I've got quite, if I may say so myself, quite a substantial collection of reviews there for your reading pleasure. How's everyone's week been? I hope it's been great, and I hope you guys been catching movies. Those of you who've been listening to me should be heavily involved or quite the movie fanatic. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to me. So I've got a film that I'm going to review today, and this is the first film that has made it in this transition from written to audio. And the reason I'm not doing video reviews, unlike many of the vloggers on YouTube like Chris Tuckman and Jeremy Jans, is simple, because I don't like being in front of the camera. I've tried it before. I've tried recording a video review of myself. In fact, I think I recorded about 5. And I wasn't comfortable. I didn't feel like the camera liked me. I didn't like the camera very much. And even when I was at uni studying my degree, my film degree, I always wanted to be behind the camera, pretty much as a director. So that's the main reason why I'm doing audio reviews and podcasts instead of video reviews. And I think if one day I pluck up the courage to actually do a video review, you will probably see my face on screen looking all retarded and deformed. But I think that's quite a while away. So for those of you who are listening to me for the first time, and if you've not been following my written reviews on thecriticalreel.com, let me just tell you a bit about myself. My name is Zach. I live in Perth, Australia, and I think like everyone who reviews films and talks about films online, on YouTube, on iTunes, my main driving passion is film. Obviously, film and cinema. Whatever it is, whether it's silent film, classics, foreign films, independent films, Hollywood blockbusters, you name it, I'm into it. So I graduated a couple of years ago with a film degree, with aspirations of becoming a director. But while I was at uni, I discovered a love for writing about film, and that was thanks to a number of theory classes that I took. And so my love of writing about film led me to film criticism, and I started to watch films in different ways and to analyze them in different ways and talk about them in different ways, to share my opinion on them without being too technical. I don't like being a technical reviewer, which I think a lot of professional reviewers out there do. To me, watching a film is a personal experience, and so all my reviews, if you were to visit my website and read my reviews, you would see that all of them are written from the first person, in the first person, because it's how I responded to the film. And that's what watching film is about. Everyone responds differently. So I give my opinions on the film without being too technical. I don't like to focus on, a set list of things like the acting and the production design and the cinematography and the direction and whatnot. I focus on what appeals to me. If the production design, is not integral to the story for me, then I just don't talk about it. I talk about what is integral for me. And that's pretty much my approach to film criticism. And more recently, I've developed, I think, an ambition or a dream almost to start up and run my own independent niche cinema. Just a small one, probably one screen, that is dedicated to screening silent films and classics and foreign films. Films that my generation especially, or even my parents' generation, didn't grow up watching because they were just not born yet. And I think there's so many good films from the past that can heavily inspire and influence filmmakers of the present. And that's one thing I realize about filmmakers today. A lot of them don't draw on the wealth of experience that cinema has to offer. As young an art form as we are, there is so much to offer. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. Just letting you know what my film background is, just so you know that I'm not a sanctimonious know-it-all who thinks he knows everything about film. I still have a lot to learn about film, and I'm eager. I'm eager to go on this journey to learn about film, and hopefully you guys can join me. And I think it's great because film has so much to offer. Cinema has so much to offer. We just need to tap into it. All right, boring stuff out of the way. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., that's the film I'm going to be reviewing today, the first of my audio reviews. It's directed by Guy Ritchie and stars Henry Cavill, Armie Hammer, and Alicia Vikander. And it's essentially about the Cold War. I think that's the best way that I can describe it, because the Cold War plays such a strong role in the foundation of this film that many aspects of the Cold War seep into the production, and especially into the characters that Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer play. Cavill plays Napoleon Solo, an American, and Armie Hammer plays Ilya Kuryakin, who's the Russian. And, if you know your history, you know that America and Russia had this decades-long arms race. And it was a time of very deep paranoia because, neither knew what was going to happen. Neither knew what weapons the other had and if anyone was going to start a nuclear war. And what The Man from U.N.C.L.E. does quite subtly but very effectively is convert Cavill and Hammer's characters into personifications of their individual countries. And so you've got Napoleon Solo, who's an American, and he's very cocksure, very smug, very arrogant. He thinks he has the situation under control all the time. He's also, a big womanizer. He values sex probably above the job. And I think that is quite accurate of his character, and that was very much like World War II United States, and even the United States up to the Vietnam War, where they thought that they could walk in to Vietnam and get rid of the Vietnamese rebels just like that, and they got their asses handed to them. And on the other hand, you've got Ilya Kuryakin, who's very stoic, very implacable, very strong, but at the same time very prone to outbursts of aggression, very prone to sudden violence. And I think that was very much like World War II Russia, and even the Russia just after World War II, the Russia that started this whole arms race with the United States. And so what the film does quite effectively is turn these two characters into their countries. So you essentially have the Cold War going at it without direct references to the Cold War. And that works for the film because it's set in the 1960s. It's set during the decade that the Cold War really took off, and which also led to the inception of many espionage, paranoia-driven shows, like the Man from U.N.C.L.E. TV series, which this movie is based on, as well as the Mission Impossible TV series. It was a decade where James Bond was born, along with its parody, Get Smart. And so a lot of espionage, a lot of spy stuff happening during the 60s. And that carries into The Man from U.N.C.L.E. because, unlike Mission Impossible, this is set in the 60s. So it's a very tainted, a very uneasy decadence that the decade has to offer, and it's all on full display. I think Guy Ritchie does a wonderful job coordinating his production design and his score to evoke this kind of decadence from the decade. But it's all the film is also good at highlighting the fact that beneath all this decadence there was this seething espionage pool, if you will, that contained a lot of double crossing and double agents, and are you who you say you are, and are you who I think you are? All these questions that play around during the decade are reflected in this film to quite an effective degree. But if there's anything that I maybe don't agree with is Guy Ritchie's approach to the film. I mean, the film is very Guy Ritchie in the fact that it values style quite a lot more over substance. And if you look at Guy Ritchie's earlier films, Lock, Stock, Snatch, Swept Away, that inexplicable film, even his later ones like the Sherlock Holmes movies, they all valued style over substance. And sometimes the plots didn't matter as much as what happened to the characters and what the characters said and how the characters said them. I think that is the most important to Guy Ritchie, developing his characters into people that connect to the audience on one level while connecting to the plot on another level. And that's the thing about The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is that the plot is quite impenetrable. I think if you don't pay attention, if you miss certain things, you're not going to understand the plot as well as you should. You can argue that, the Mission Impossible films do the same thing. The plots for Mission Impossible are really secondary because most of the time you have no idea what's going on. But the whole joy of Mission Impossible was to see Tom Cruise doing his Tom Cruise thing. Whereas The Man from U.N.C.L.E., it kind of plays on that from the Mission Impossible films, that the plot is secondary, that you're not focusing on the plot. And I think that works to a degree, but this being the first film of the franchise, which I'm assuming is going to be a franchise, I think you kind of need a plot to establish these characters, to ground them in a kind of reality that the audience can connect with, before running wild with the action, with the stunts, and leaving the plot behind. But I think if you leave the plot behind from the start and you focus on the characters and everything else, then it doesn't leave a gateway for the audience to get completely invested in the characters, because the characters are not invested in the story that they're in. And so I think that's my main qualm with The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and with a number of Guy Ritchie films in general. Do I question his style? Not really. I mean, I might question some of his decisions in terms of converting a film with characters who are action stars into a film with characters who matter. And I think that has worked for him sometimes, but it hasn't worked for him as well. Does it work in The Man from U.N.C.L.E.? Yes, I think it does. But perhaps not as well as it could have. I'm giving The Man from U.N.C.L.E. 3 stars. If you've seen it, did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was all right? Write to me. Let me know what you think. I'd love to know what you thought about this film. And yeah, if you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, please subscribe and visit thecriticalreel.com for more reviews.